Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the Friday, October 20th Organizational Council meeting to order and begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis, and we acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. So welcome, everyone. I'll just begin with some very brief introductory remarks and just acknowledge that this is this term's second organizational meeting, and we are now halfway through the term, and it's always a good time when you sit at the organizational meeting to reflect on what has been accomplished to date and think about what it is that we want to accomplish over the next 2 years of this term, but more so about how we want to keep the momentum moving forward to progress our community. And I'm reminded often, as I was yesterday at the mid-sized cities meeting, that mid-sized cities are the fastest growing communities in Alberta, and how important it is to have a plan on how we're going to accommodate the growth. And that it's not just about new families moving in from other provinces or from across the world, but remembering it's our children and for some, our grandchildren that will hopefully continue to live and raise their families here in Fort Saskatchewan. I want to thank everyone for your continued dedication to working for our citizens and keeping Fort Saskatchewan the best place to live, work, play, and invest in. Thank you. So with that, we have 2 items on the agenda. The first one is council meeting dates and times, and Andrew Kaiser to present.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. I'm here with this very brief presentation to essentially say I'm here for any questions you may have regarding the report before you, which contains 5 motions for council's consideration. These motions are for the scheduling of regular council meetings for the coming year, as well as committee of the whole meetings, as well as the cancellation of some of the upcoming meetings and rescheduling of some meetings. So, as with every organizational council meeting, it's pretty straightforward, but I'm here if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. So I'll ask if anybody has any questions. If not, what I think we'll do is, so everybody gets, as many people make motions, we'll just go through and everybody just make one motion and we'll continue on to the next one. So choose which one you'd like to make and buzz in, or I can start left to right. Go ahead,
Make a motion on. I'm totally lost here.
Oh, okay. Councillor Noyen will do the first one. You can do the second one.
So I'll move that council approve the schedule of regular council meetings for the City of Fort Saskatchewan to be held on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month through virtual means and or in person in council chamber at City Hall, Fort Saskatchewan, commencing at 2 p.m. And should council be required to meet in closed session, they may do so as the last order of business on the agenda or as agreed upon by council to discuss matters permitted under FOIP.
All right. Thank you. Are there any questions or debate on that? Councillor Macon, did you have debate or you're just, no? Okay. I just see you've asked. Okay. So with that, I will close the motion. So for the first one, please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Blizzard, would you like to do the second one? Oh, go ahead.
All right. I make a motion that council approve committee of the whole meetings to be held on the 3rd Tuesday of each month through virtual means or in person in council chamber at City Hall, address 1005, 102 Street, Fort Saskatchewan, commencing at 2 p.m. And should the Committee of the Whole be required to meet in closed session, they may do so the last order of business on the agenda or as agreed upon by the members to discuss matters as permitted under Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion or debate? If not, I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Councillor Kelly, would you like to do the next one?
Certainly. I move that council cancel the following City of Fort Saskatchewan. I'm not on yet.
Oh,
I'll start over.
I had a long day yesterday.
I move that council cancel the following City of Fort Saskatchewan regular council meetings. Tuesday, November 14, 23, Tuesday, December 26, 23, Tuesday, July 23, 2024, Tuesday, August 13, 2024.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or debate? Not seeing any, I'm going to close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Harris, would you like to do the next one? Go ahead.
I would move that council cancel the committee of the whole meeting scheduled for Tuesday, November the 21st, Tuesday, December the 19th, Tuesday, July the 16th, and Tuesday, July the 20th, all in first two and 23 and the last two and 24.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any discussion or debate? Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote. And that is carried unanimously. And who would like to put on the last one? Just go. Go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
I move that council reschedule the Tuesday, July 9, 24 regular council meeting to Tuesday, July 2, 24 to be held through virtual and or in person in council chamber at City Hall, 1005 102 Street, Fort Saskatchewan, commencing at 2 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion or debate? Not seeing any. I will close the motion. Please cast your vote. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, we will move on to the next item, appointment of council representatives to the boards, committees, and commissions. Mr. Kaiser.
Thank you, Your Worship. At each year's organizational council meeting, council determines the appointments of council members to various boards and committees which the city has membership. Starting on page 5 of the agenda package, you will find administration's summary of the various boards and committees, with the current appointments on the left and the recommended appointments on the right. The recommendations do reflect council's discussions prior to this meeting. So if you have any questions of me, please don't hesitate to ask.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Kaiser? Not seeing any. I'll take a motion. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, be pleased to to move that council approve the recommended 2023-24 council member board, committee, and commission appointments as presented.
Thank you. Is there any discussion and debate?
Nothing except to wish everybody the best on their boards and committees this year.
All right, thank you. So I'll close the motion. Please cast your vote.
We just require Councillor Abertoyer's vote.
It didn't come up for me, but I vote in favor.
Okay. That is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. The organizational meeting is always the fastest meeting of the year. Administration does need 5 minutes to transfer from one data set to another. So with that, I will adjourn the organizational meeting and we will take a 5-minute recess. We'll actually make it 8 minutes so that you've got enough time. So 9:20, be back here and we will be in recess. Okay, are we good to go? All right, so we've got the data sets changed over, so I'm going to call the regular council meeting for Friday, October 20th, 2023 to order, and I will begin with a land acknowledgement that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located within Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis, and we acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. Okay, so I will ask, we do have the first portion open if there is anybody here wishing to speak as delegations, but not seeing anybody who is external. I don't believe we have any delegations. So with that, we will go straight on to item 3, which is the 2024 capital budget flagged items and continuation of 2024 to 2033 10-year capital plan discussion. And Mr. Eamon will be presenting, and so that we have 4 flagged items, and each individual will be allowed to, who flag the item, will have an opportunity to make a brief comment and ask any following clarifying questions. If anybody has any further questions, they can ask those. Other than that, unless there's a motion, then we don't go into discussion and debate, unless there's a motion. So if there's no motions, we'll just move on to the next flagged item. So with that, Mr. Eamon.
Thank you, Worship, and good morning, members of council. Actually, there is no presentations to be presented by administration today. It's basically an opportunity for council to go through the flagged items, so I would suggest that we just start with the first flagged item based on the attached document.
Okay, so the first flagged item is fire engine life cycle replacement. Councillor Kelly, you flagged this item, so go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. A couple concerns, and I'll rephrase it with questions, and then I still get to comment, Mayor Catcher.
Well, they put this down that you can make a brief statement at the beginning, and then if you have questions.
So when do we get back to commenting on the capital budget before today's over?
If there's a motion that comes forward.
Okay, but we do get back to the capital budget, and we can deal with the items on the capital budget one more time today, yes or no?
If there's another item that you wish to bring forward, you could ask for that item to be brought forward at the end of the flagged items.
I ask because the chair interrupted my comments on one of the subjects at the last meeting, and I anticipated that with the clarification that we had subsequent, that we'd be able to revisit some of these line items.
Okay,
and in particular, that one.
That item is number 4, if I believe it is, which is a flagged item.
But I will be able to comment. That was my original question.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Perfect. Fire Chief Martin, I'm going to just explain my concerns if I can, try to explain them, and then maybe try to get a question in, and if not, you can respond as you see fit, obviously. The concern I had with this program, or this particular project, is it appeared to me that because the fire department hadn't repaired the pump on the existing third engine for a couple of years now, that the equipment itself was, I won't say extraneous, but surplus to the apparent needs of the department, which causes me to question the need for another pump. On top of that, I know our policy references the NAFTA guidelines and we're going to adhere to them. But they are just guidelines, and it would seem to me that rather than the guideline as being the primary driver for a new engine or a new pumper, that the condition of the actual unit would be the driver. Given that this is our third unit, and I don't know how many times in it per annum we would be expected to use this or require this particular piece of equipment, I'm wondering what the actual condition of the existing pumper is and what the repair costs would be to fix the pumps so that they pump to standard, assuming, of course, that the engine and the powertrain is otherwise functional. So that's where I'm coming from. I look forward to your comments.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Kelly. So a few questions in there, so I'll try to answer them best I can. So you're correct. The NFPA is a standard or a guideline, but that is the only standard that the fire departments follow across Canada, and that is, we don't have another standard to go look at. So we test to the NFPA standard as our industry best practice. You are correct with that. That's the only thing we have to go by for testing apparatuses, other equipment, when we look at PPE. So that's what we use. As far as that truck, when we looked at that truck and replacing it, when it came up to the 20 years of life cycle, and that's normally when we replace trucks, is at 20 years. We run them 15 years as a frontline apparatus, and then 5 years as a backup or a second due engine. So this piece at that time, our level of service was only one fire truck out of the station. And having only one truck with full-time coverage, this left us with the ability to have a reserve for maintenance and annual pump testing, as well as truck for our casuals or paid on calls to come in and respond to incidents as well. So at that time, when we looked at it, we felt pushing this out a little further, because it was that third truck, and we were at end of life cycle. We felt at the level of service we could push that. We also looked at the cost. At that time, I think we were looking at 3 to 4 years to replace this truck. Since then, that time has been shortened coming out of COVID. So we looked at that. We looked at cost. We also looked at the maintenance on this truck. That truck was tested to standards 21 years ago. So now we have to test them to the standards today. And so it's basically, we're testing to a brand new truck. So it has to pass. It's not just the pump that would have to pass the test. It is the lighting, it is the driving, the braking, everything basically mechanical on that truck. We would have to retest to do that. And that cost to bring all the lightings up to the new standard, the pump capacity, everything, we'd have to go in and pretty much gut that truck. And at that time, even to get parts for a 21-year-old truck, we've been having challenges at doing that. So when we looked at all that, we felt at that time we could push it out a little. Since moving now to the next level of service, which we went to here mid-year with running 2 trucks out of the fire station, when we looked at, again, maintenance and downtime for overall trucks, as well as responding to calls for our fire flow rating. And when we looked at that, we had about 83 days of downtime between all of our trucks, with between maintenance, annual pump testing, CVIPs. So if that would be the case, we wouldn't have another truck for our casuals or paid on calls to respond. Again, it is a guideline, but we also look at striving to have as many firefighters on scene as we can to fight a residential structure fire, and that number is 15. So right now we currently have the 6 responding. So we do have that third truck going, as well as sometimes a 4th, and we base our fire flow rating, and I don't want to go too far down that path, but we base a lot of that on how we fight a residential house fire on that fire flow, and that's consistent with 4 trucks. So if we would remove this third truck, we would reduce that fire flow. So when we looked at all that and considering where we're at today with our level of service, that's why we moved this back up to be replaced in the capital to have it replaced.
Okay, thank you. And of course, I was unaware of the 83 days of total downtime for the various units. I assume when we increase the manpower at the fire department, and I think that's in progress or expected sometime soon, that the standard call would then be for 2 pumpers to hit the road immediately. Is that the new plan?
You are correct, Councillor.
So
yes.
you still feel you need a third one for reserve because there's now 2. Okay, and thank you. I get that. I think that answer makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just ask if anybody else has any questions on that one since it was flagged. Okay, not seeing any. Thank you very much. The next item is traffic calming implementation. So I put this flag on, and the only comment question that I have, because I seem to be the only one that really had any concerns about it, is are these really the best locations as we're going to spend $1.4 million for these roundabouts? Because when I drive around the city and I look about how much the traffic flows that go on 86th Avenue versus what's on West Park Drive and on the other one, it's the only question that I have, and I just need confidence that it truly represents traffic flows, and B, it's going to actually do something.
Thank you, Your Worship. We believe these are the 2 best locations for at least to start. They are on collector roads, two-lane roadways. They'd be simple roundabouts. By 86th Avenue, I'm assuming you mean 86th Avenue, South Fort Drive, that length. That's an arterial road. It's 4-lane roads. We wouldn't look to put roundabouts on those. Just they become more complicated and much bigger. And the warrants for signals are there. There's enough traffic there to warrant the signals that go in, so we would stay with those.
Okay. I'm good then. I have no other questions. Councillor Noyan?
So these 2 are set to go out to tender in the spring, I guess, to be done concurrently. Would they happen at the exact same time? Like both areas would? Like, is that the plan with engineering to have the projects coincidentally occurring, or one and the other throughout the season?
Your Worship, Councillor Noyan, so we'd put them out as one package. The contractor would help set those schedules. The intent would be that they would likely do them concurrently, just saving mobilization, things like that when they're doing that work. But again, we're not closing the roads as we're doing this, so while there will be impacts, it's not a full closure.
Right, yeah, it's good to know what to expect if this happens, and then we can field questions if they come in. Yeah, I think that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris, questions?
Mr. Schaefer, I totally understand the need for both of these roundabout projects. The question that I've got, though, have you put thought to mind relative to the detour schedules and how you're going to manage traffic through there? The one on 95A and West Park Way in particular has a 7-Eleven, so that's kind of be complicated. The other one, I think, it appears to be more straightforward. So do you have a detour plan in mind, and are you able to share that with us in relation to how that would work? Or would that be something that would come out at a future date?
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, we haven't developed a detour plan, traffic accommodation plans yet. That'll be something we'll work with the contractors with once they're on board.
Okay, so but by and large, that is a part of the project, that ultimately we will have a well thought out detour plan with appropriate notification to the area residents so they know what's going on, correct?
Your Worship, Councillor Harris, that's correct.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. We'll detour them all in front of your house and your house. They're on West Parkway. Thank you very much. There doesn't appear to be any other questions. All right, the next flagged item was citywide security camera upgrades. Councillor Kelly? Just wait for. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Again, good morning and thank you. The whole point I think that I was trying to make when I flagged this, and you've addressed it in your response, by the way, is that cameras really work well when they're monitored. To just record activities that are a nuisance or an issue is a benefit, but I'll stress a limited benefit in my mind because it does nothing but give a blurry image of something that happened 2 days or 3 days ago. What would it, and you've made reference in your comments, I believe, that you think it would probably be a good idea for how to allow the RCMP, for instance, to be able to have live access to the cameras. And I agree. So my question is, do we need a motion from council to cause administration to take a look at that, or are you folks going to move on that on your own accord? Do you need a budget allocation for that? What do you need? And I'll try to make the proper motion if needed.
I'm going to go to Mr. Fleming.
Yeah, Your Worship, I don't think we need a budget motion for that. The bulk of the work, from what I understand, not knowing the technicalities of it, is that getting them the physical access at the detachment would be relatively straightforward. The bulk of the work would be in the FOIP. I can't remember the term for it. It's a technical assessment that you have to do before you can give someone access to the data. So we would just have to go through another FOIP assessment. And once that's completed, which we could likely do before the cameras are installed and operating, then we can go forward from there. And it'll be, so sorry, to answer your question, I don't believe we need a motion from council. I believe we'll just look into that. We will look into that.
Could I just ask then on behalf of council that once you've done your assessment and you're either moving ahead or have it completed, something you get back to council with an email or an update at a council meeting letting us know what you did and what you think? Is that possible?
Yeah, through your worship, I'll make a note of it and we'll follow up.
That would be great. And that's all I had, Mercatcher.
Okay, thank you. I've just got one question. It's probably more for Trevor. So when you're looking at doing these, are these going to be multiple cameras that are installed in these locations so that it can shoot from different angles?
Your Worship, that's right. We'll have the vendor will come on site and we'll figure out the best angles to put the cameras at the different locations.
Okay, that was okay. Yeah. All right, and then I assume you have to post signs too to let people know that there's cameras in play. Do you or not?
I'll have to refer that to
Mr. Kaiser.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, for the question. So it's the process of video surveillance is something that the Office of the Privacy Commissioner oversees and gives direction to municipalities, and they comment on the scale implementation. And one of the things is that it be publicly it be posted through signage that the area is under video surveillance. So we do that now with our current surveillance systems, and we would in the future.
Okay, and last question. So this would sort of be like a phase one of getting the most urgent places that have been identified. Is there consideration that as the city grows that there will be more requests to add on? And will whatever the vendor brings have the ability?
Your Worship, that's correct. The system that we have right now is quite scalable and it's got room for expansion. So other facilities in the future that we want to look at to put cameras in, and like I said, even the bridge deck, places like that you want that monitored, that can be done as well. It's just the main cost of these projects is building the fiber out to them to get the connection. But it can be done, any of those facilities. The camera system will handle all that.
Okay. Do we think the province would be interested in contributing to put cameras under there, given the amount of spray painting that goes on? Mr. Fleming?
I mean, through your worship, we could check in. We are actually responsible for the operations of the. You're talking about the Ped Bridge, right?
Yeah.
We're technically responsible for the operations, so we could ask, but I have a feeling they would say that's for you as the operator to take responsibility for.
And last question that ties to that, is Strathcona or Sturgeon County responsible for any of that? Or
through your worship, no. I think we're contracted by the province to provide the operations. I don't recall the amount off the top of my head, but
okay.
I think it's a matter of convenience. Like, we've already got equipment that's close by and whatnot. So
okay, thank you, Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you. This just occurred to me as I was sitting here, so it might already be in place, and it might make no sense. So you're going to tell me. For areas like the boat launch area, where I'm told young people in their cars go down sometime at night and maybe mess around a little bit, or the pavilion at West River's Edge, the remoter areas, do we have motion sensor lights that would activate when there's activity at night and to just help discourage activities like that?
Oh.
No one else has an answer.
Your worship, Councillor Kelly, I don't believe we have motion sensors. The lights are just on.
And so those areas are fully lit, Grant? I've not been down there at night, so I don't know.
Your worship, Councillor Kelly, I'm trying to think. I know that we have roadway lighting and there's some parking lot lighting. I don't know if that extends to the boat launch parking lot off the top of my head. But around the building, I think those lights are left on as well.
It was Councillor Harris maybe that expressed some concern around the parking lot at the boat launch. Would it make sense to get some bright lights on that area, do you think? It is lit?
I think we've got street lights down there, don't we?
And if we do, then my question is over. I'm unaware. That's why I'm asking.
I can't confirm if we have them on the parking lot at the boat launch area or not. So
Not in the parking lot, but on the road down.
On the road down, yes, we do.
Okay, you're good.
Well, just a comment. It seems obvious to me that if we have problem areas like that, that the first course of action, if possible, would be to light it, to discourage late night activities. And I'll leave it at that. You guys are very capable, I know. So, yeah, I could be done now. Thank you, Mayor Catcher.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris.
The Parks bylaw specifies that nobody's supposed to be down in that area in a park after 11 o'clock at night, correct?
Your worship, Councillor Harris, I believe that's correct.
Yeah, so if anybody's down there racing around, they are effectively then breaching the bylaw and could be charged under that particular bylaw, as opposed to what we're talking about as a security issue. That's just a clarification, so, and there is signage to that effect, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, I can speak to that. Yes, there is signage in our parks saying that they close in accordance with the park bylaw, parkland bylaw being 11.
So they're two separate things. I get that, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. So not seeing any additional questions. Thank you very much, and we'll move on to the flagged item number 4, aquatics planning and construction for future discussion. Councillor Kelly. Just wait for Mr. Babiak to get up here. Okay, go ahead.
I think probably over the last several months we've had some meaningful and some rather heartfelt conversations on this subject. The question I have now either would relate to perhaps Mr. Fleming. I'll leave it up to you folks. Given that at the last meeting, Council passed a resolution requesting a report back on how to conduct a question process, for lack of a better word, plebiscite, on the pool issue. And that report is to be expected sometime, I think, by the end of February, trusting my memory. Is city administration planning on continuing work or soliciting proposals or design? Like, there's a budget number there for the design of this thing, and I'm wondering, truthfully, how far we want to go down this path when I do believe that this item ought to go to citizen vote. So,
Mr. Fleming?
Yeah, so through your worship, I do think that there's probably a decision for council in there. So as things stand right now, as of this second, council is going to be considering in the new year whether or not they want to do a plebiscite or a survey of some sort. And there's also an item in the budget that directs us, that essentially funds, which is typically our direction to do something in the budget to start the design process. So if council is comfortable with both of those things sort of going through concurrently, then you could leave everything as is. But if there's a belief that we should not proceed with the detailed design work, then direction should probably be given on this plan request.
perfect, thank you. So I'm of the belief that we ought not to commit those funds until we have direction from the community at large. I think we have enough information at our disposal right now to ask a proper question and provide enough information to the community to help them formulate a decision on the matter. What motion would you be prepared to take, Mr. Fleming? I'm thinking out loud as I sit here that the motion would be that work be deferred pending, number one, the results, a vote on the package brought back to council before the end of February. Just defer it that long for now, and we'll see what that vote says at that time.
Yeah, through your worship, if we want to just give administration a minute, we can put something together to that effect.
Thank you.
Yeah, there was one other thing I was going to say, and now I forgot.
I would anticipate you would also need a notice of motion for the operating budget to put money in for a non-binding question or survey or something.
Through your worship, I think in my mind what I had envisioned as being possible for that one is council would just do a mid-year budget allocation when it comes back by the end of February. You could do both, but council won't have actually decided whether or not they're doing a non-binding question by December. That decision happens in the new year. So council could allocate the funds then.
Okay. How long do you need to craft a motion?
I think we just need a minute. I wouldn't even call a formal break to have everyone stay in their seats or stay here and just give us a minute.
We'll recess for, I'll say 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere. But if we come back sooner, we will be back sooner.
But I'll be 2 minutes.
Okay, we'll resume the meeting, and Councillor Kelly has requested to put on a motion regarding item 4. Go ahead. Second, go ahead. It's on the screen.
I'm just going to pull it up. Give me 1 second to read it, please. Yes, thank you. I think that covers it. So the intent of this motion isn't to remove the planning monies from the current budget. The intent of this motion is to simply not spend any of those monies until council has had a chance to consider the report coming back from administration by the end of February of 24.
Can you read the motion in? And
I
then...
certainly can. I move that council defer project 24016, aquatics planning and construction, pending a council decision on the public engagement process to gauge the support within the community for the recommended aquatics facility concept for the 2023 indoor recreation facility program service level review reports.
Thank you. I'll accept that motion. You can speak to it.
I think I just did, Mayor Katcher. I think there's more words here maybe than I would have put in, but that's fine. It needs to be clear. The intent is simply not going to start work until council has had the opportunity to review and decide on the report that's coming from administration before the end of February.
Okay, thank you. The motion is open for discussion and debate. Councillor Nguyen.
So I'm just curious if this really changes anything timeline-wise, because we're not going to be approving the capital budget or everything in it until the month and a half away from now. And then, so this is going to be coming back to us for as a report for information in roughly February. And if we agree to what's planned for this survey, then we're going to see that happening, say June or something like that. So does this really alter any timelines? Does it?
Mr. Fleming?
So through your worship, what would happen without this motion is that administration would start. I mean, we're already working on the report that this refers to that's supposed to come back by the end of February. Without this motion, if this got approved, if the plan request stayed in the budget and got approved on December 14th or whatever, administration would actually start working on the detailed design process. So likely that would mean putting together a fairly detailed tendering package, trying to secure a vendor, likely an architect, a team of architects and engineers. Now, how far would we get with that process by the end of February without me looking back at Mr. Schaefer? I don't know that, because this is a pretty significant body of work. We probably wouldn't get that far by the end of February, but I think what council's saying is don't start that work until we've clarified what we want to do with the public engagement.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
I was on council when we debated a question for, and it was called a plebiscite at the time, but it went on the election, on the ballot. And we spent, I don't know how many hours discussing the proper wording of this. There was lots of decisions to be made with the question, and we didn't have a ton of information. There wasn't a lot decided on what should go in it. So it was really tough to come up with a question. It was very general on the ballot. And one of the things I heard around the city from different people was they didn't have enough information. Why would I approve something when there's so little information? So I think without having the information of what's going to go in the building, we can't actually ask a proper question. So we need this to go on before if we do ask the general population, we need this information. And I know it's a big expense, but without it, you can't ask the proper question. We will be spending a lot of time, and it's hard to explain, but the wording, I know someone said, well, it wasn't worded properly. We spent a lot of time trying to word it properly, and it wasn't done. So I will not be supporting this motion because I think we need the work done to be able to even do public engagement if we decide that's the way we go.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harris.
So the initial cost estimate of 50 million, is that correct? And how much contingency is built into that?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, 15%.
So you could take 15% off, or you could add 15% on, is what you're telling me for this project, based on the way the initial prognostication has come out, correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, I will clarify. The initial estimate of $49 million is based on a Class 5 estimate, which is a plus 50% minus 30%, and I would assume the contingency would also be related to that. So it's 15% of whatever the final project cost would be. So at a Class 5, we're expecting it to be a $49 million project. The planning, which Mr. Schaefer could speak more detail to, would be to firm up the costing so that we can bring that down from a 50% cost estimate to something closer to 20 or 30. But again, the contingency is a percentage of that final total project cost.
Yeah, so we have to expend some money to do a detailed design, is what I'm hearing, to be able to have a more definitive thing to put out to an engineering firm to come up with this design, right? To rationalize the cost for the project to a greater degree?
Through your worship, yes, depending on which project management option is picked. Yeah, either it'd be greater design, or it could be a project team is brought on with architects and engineers all and the construction team all at once to determine it together.
Yeah, and you gave us some information that showed the site plan with the potential of having the thing on the northeast side of the existing DCC, or on the south side of the DCC, correct? So the whole process would then ultimately identify the best siting of this facility in relation to the current utilization of the facility and future expansion or utilization of the facility. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, yes, that's correct.
And so that's a fairly technical process that ultimately allows us to then have a definitive cost analysis that we could then put into a question for the public, right?
Through your worship to Councillor Harris, yes, it would be definitely a much more refined number than what we currently have.
So the expenditure of this money that's in the budget currently would allow that to happen, insofar as council will then make a decision about actually doing it as a plebiscite or otherwise, correct? Is that kind of... I'm trying to work through this in my mind because I see, in one respect, you got to spend money to ultimately save some money or expend some money.
I'm going to go to Mr. excuse me, Mr. Fleming.
Yeah, through your worship, I don't know if I'll say it any different than Mr. Babiak, but I think part of the decision is how much information do you need to go to the public. So if the desire is to go through this design process to get to that level of information, and a lot of the $5 million is in detailed design and engineering, which I don't think has any bearing on, wouldn't have any bearing on a potential a question to the public. So
there's 2 points. There's a point in the project planning where we expend money to get to a design that ultimately allows us to go out to the public with, this is what it's going to look like, and this is our estimate of cost, and this is what it would do to the taxes. And if for whatever reason the plebiscite says no, the community doesn't want that, then any money spent up to that point in time is a sunk cost. Is that a fair assessment?
Through your worship, yeah, any money you spend before you ask the question could potentially be a sunk cost if the project doesn't go forward.
Yeah.
So if we're comfortable going forward with a level 5 cost estimate, we could work on putting together the survey or the plebiscite question right away. If we're saying no, we want to start spending the $5 million to get to that class 2 cost estimate, then you'd be doing your survey or your question probably a year and a half from now, but you would have a much more refined cost estimate number. So in terms of timing, if you want to use this process to inform the question, then the question has to move out while this process plays itself out. I think that Mr. Schaefer tells me the design process kind of end to end, depending on the project management methodology we use, is probably about a 2-year period for this to finish. So if the desire is to do the question sooner, then I would say you're going to go forward with a more conceptual level of information. If the desire is to go forward with a question that has a more refined cost estimate, you have to spend the money, and then you have to wait for the design process to play out.
Well, I'm reflecting back on the time, and I was around when we did the plebiscite or the vote on the DCC, and we had a relatively, council gave an amount of a budget. Initially, it was 18.5. That was grossed up with the addition of additional things to the facility over time. And then we went to the public with a question and a general design that people ultimately were able to look at. And part of what Councillor Blizzard referenced was the fact of coming up with a relevant, cogent question that you could put out to the public. You got to have a level of specificity and level of costing. And so would this expenditure of this money in the future, and then not too distant future, but not dragging it out, give us a better opportunity to then be more definitive with the public? Is that kind of what this would come down to?
Through your worship, if you go through this process and do the question at the end, so you spend, I don't know that you would spend the whole $5 million, but you would go through, you'd probably spend a good portion of the money, and that would get you to a place where you have a class 2 cost estimate. You would have done public engagement, and you would have a more refined design. So that's one option. The other option is you say we don't want to risk spending the money, and on the off chance that there isn't, that the vote isn't a yes, and we'll go forward with more conceptual level, the more conceptual level information that we have now, and we can do the questions sooner. So I don't know. I mean, I'd have to ponder. I don't have a recommendation between those two. I'd say those are sort of the two overriding options that council has right now.
So just help me understand where we right now, the more detailed design up front to be able to then be more specific in relation to the question of the public. Is that kind of what the budget currently entails?
The budget didn't contemplate a plebiscite or asking the public the question. So I think, I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but just in the 30-second conversation we had here, I think Councillor and Kelly's intent was do the question sooner with more conceptual level information and just leave this in the budget. But if there's a desire to get on with this work, we're still going to come back in February, but we will have begun the process of the detailed design.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I've got Councillor Abatoye and then Councillor Macon. Go ahead, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you. I support the motion. I think that we had a vote here on Monday where we said we wanted to have a conversation, about community engagement, which I fully supported. I think that holding on and, getting the community to tell us, tell us what they want us to do essentially before we start to spend the money. February is just a few months down the line, and then we can start to spend the money. And so for that reason, I support the motion. I think that's, spending the money prior to February, and, knowing what council wants to do going forward will be best than, spending the money now, and then, maybe the votes gets approved or not, So for that reason, I think I support the motion. I think we should wait until council makes a decision on what we want to do concerning the poll in February, and then we can start to spend the money for detailed design. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Macon.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Perfect. So I'm going to support the motion. Back in 2017, when I was campaigning for my first term on council, I did request a lot of information from the city about the pool. And I know now that, like, I have a lot more information now than I did before making that vote. So I am very confident in the information that we can provide the city in order to make a better decision this time. So I do believe that we should wait until we get the results of hopefully that vote before we move on with spending this money. So I will support the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'm next in the speaking order. So I'm not going to support the motion. I think we would run into exactly what we did before. My personal belief is you're not wasting this money. At some point in time, there is going to be a request or a requirement to build a pool, and this would actually make it to shovel ready. Whether council approves it or not, at least it would be ready to go at some point in time when a council chooses to move forward. But my greatest fear with this, once again, is you go out to the public and you say, well, we have a conceptual, and then all of a sudden the public says, well, is there a river? Is there, water slides? Like, can we put these in? And based on what the public's perception is of what they think they're getting can be totally different. If you go out with an actual plan, this is it, this is what council says we can afford to build, this is it, then they can make a definitive decision on whether they want to support it or not. I believe you need to have the design work. It's not a waste of money. We do anticipate a pool will be built at some point in time. So let's get the design work done so that people definitively know what they would be voting on. Because I absolutely agree. I think when you leave too much to could be, maybe, this is what we're thinking about, it's conceptual, but then you get into change, and then you're going back to the public, well, what do you want again? So I think this is being proactive, and I think it's a good movement forward. So thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions, so Councillor Kelly, you can close and make your final comments.
Thank you. Question of administration. For the second phase, the money's in the current budget for 24, the $5 million. We're to do detailed design based on the drawings that council has already seen. You weren't going to reimagine those drawings. You were going to design based on what you've already prepared. Is that correct?
Mr. Fleming?
So through your worship, the work that's been done so far, a lot of the work that will really inform the next phase probably revolve more around defining that service level. What we have now is quite conceptual in nature. So I think it would form the basis for what we do going forward for sure. But my experience with this is a lot of times, as you get into it, you talk to your stakeholders, you talk to as it starts to integrate more into the building pocket and the site, changes start to get made. But I think the work that we have, yes, would form a basis for going forward.
And I understand that there might be some changes to the corner of the building or the position of a room, but you gave council in the last report drawings, footprint drawings. They gave a suggested size, the fact that there would be a lazy river, the fact that there would be a water slide, the fact that there would be a lap pool of a certain dimension. Those items were included in those drawings. Are you anticipating any significant change from those drawings going forward? Because if we are, then we need to start this dance over again.
Again, I don't, it's hard for me to predict the future. I don't think there would be significant changes from that. But again, we've done less than 1% of a body of work that takes 2 years, right? So,
and I'm not asking you, Mr. Fleming, to predict the future.
Yeah, understand.
As you sit here today, does anybody on the admin team anticipate that the drawings that council has seen will change dramatically?
Through your worship, I don't, but I would like to see if anyone else has I'd like to open it up to the team here. You want it?
Your Worship, Councillor Kelly, I don't think there'll be any fundamental changes. I mean, this will be the basis of the design. As you said, things will move around, things will get tweaked, but I think that more or less, this is what we're aiming towards.
Thank you. That's what I thought we were doing. That was the purpose for this last 7 or 8 months worth of reports. Thank you, Mr. Schaefer. Whether or not, here's the way I look at this. We have a pool with approximately a $50 million price tag plus 50%, minus 25%. It's never going to be the minus 25. There's not a hope in heck that's ever going to happen. So the baseline is $50 million. If it added 40%, that's another 20 million. I'm less concerned about that than the present value number of 250 million. Because when we look at the cost to the community of this particular pool, the present value of the cost to have this pool, that's today's number, based on that calculation, is 250 million. So 20 million added to 250 doesn't change that number very much. I'm concerned.
They're working.
Either they're agreeing or they're disagreeing. I don't know which it is. It's becomes a 10% adjustment or less than a 10% adjustment, not a 40% adjustment. I want to comment because I lived in Fort Saskatchewan for the 2 voter or citizen votes, plebiscites that have happened historically. Actually, I think there was 3, but I'm going to comment on 2 because those 2, I think, were referenced by fellow councillors. Starting with the Dow Center. The Dow Center vote was a question authorizing administration to borrow $18 million. It wasn't a question on whether or not he wanted council to build the Dow Center. It was a vote on a borrowing authorization. Was there information given to the citizens at that time? Well, I'm going to share with you my personal experience, and my recollection is accurate because it deeply affected me. A brochure was sent out to the citizens. I got one in my office and I got one at home. Would it be possible to visit that person and ask them to quit? Thank you. And I know they have a job to do. And for those of you that don't know that are online, there's construction going on the edge of the building outside. The question was, do you authorize council or administration to borrow this amount of money, authorize the city? And here's the cost of that borrowing, X dollars per annum per household. That was the only information given. I phoned City Hall 2 days before the vote and asked, because it didn't mention it in the little brochure, and asked if that cost included the cost to operate the Dow Center. It took me 4 levels of transfers to get to somebody that would give me the answer, and the answer was no. So there was no information given on the cost to operate the Dow. Now, subsequent to the vote, I happened upon the then mayor and the then councillor who were together, and that particular councillor is still a friend of mine, and he's probably going to give me a phone call later. But the 2 of them happened to be together, and I asked them both why they didn't see fit to give the citizens the costs along the true cost to have the Dow Center. And the first response, and I won't attribute these responses, the first response was it's not going to cost the citizens anything because we are retiring a debenture and we're just going to move that money and use it to operate the Dow, which is, of course, makes no sense. The second person overheard that comment, and you can see their eyes get a little bigger, and they go, actually, Brian, that's not true. We simply didn't know how to budget it, so we didn't, which I took as a much more honest answer. We're way beyond that now. both council and administration are way beyond that level of expertise. We have the numbers. We can share them with our citizens. The 2017 vote on the swimming pool, I am one of those people that truly felt I had zero information. And if, in fact, the council has to spend so much time crafting the question, then I wonder what gamesmanship was trying to be built into the question. The question's very simple. Here's the pool cost, here's the detail of the pool. Do you want it or not? Yes or no? That's it. No more questions. No information necessary. Or pardon me, the question is very simple. The information behind it, not so simple. But we have that information. We're prepared to give it. In fact, our communication policy mandates that we must give it to the citizens. We don't have an option anymore. So I honestly believe that to spend or to start the process of spending another $5 million to better define the cost, I'm not concerned about, because when you look at the plus or minus 40% adjustment, in my mind, you're using the wrong denominator. The construction cost is actually the very smallest part of owning this building for the next 40 years, as the present value calculation clearly shows. So we have drawings, we have studies, we have concepts. We can even put pictures up of pools that we've found that show up in our reports, actually, of pools in Alberta that were looked at that would visually be similar in scope and size and service level. Like I said, I firmly believe we have all we need right now to put the question to the citizens. I just think that this council is going to do the best job ever of providing the citizens with the information necessary to make the proper decision. Thank you. I'm call the question, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. The motion is now closed. Please cast your vote. And the motion is carried. All right. Okay, we'll move on. So council has received answers to their questions. They were sent out to everybody. So the next step is just to ask if anybody has anything that they want to bring up from day one that was missed. Councillor Kelly.
I'd like to address the answers, please.
The responses?
Correct.
Okay. Do you have a particular one?
Yeah. I appreciate the response on my questioning around the scoring of the attributes. I must state I don't understand. So let's use the secondary water source as an example. It scores as a 1 for I'm scrolling through the response. There was the water source was secondary water was given a 1 for cost recovery. That's what I recall from my questioning on Monday. Environmental, welcoming, responsive, well-planned, safe. Where's the cost recovery portion of this thing? I don't see that in the response. I'm going to open up.
Mr. Dance, or I'm not.
Open up the document itself while you get prepared.
Okay, Mr. Fleming.
So you're just trying to figure out where we scored the cost recovery, how we scored it?
It was, give me a second, I've got it. Okay. My question revolved around secondary / alternative water source. I'll get you back to 2024, this is the attachment, 2024 capital project scoring details. And if I go to page 3, roughly in the middle, there's numerous line items for the attributes for the secondary water source. The third line in is recovery cost, and that's scored a 1, which is very low. My understanding of the secondary water line, and I stand to be corrected, is that the cost of the water line will be largely borne by the reduced cost of the water source or the water supply that the city would enjoy by changing suppliers.
Yeah, through your worship, I mean, we could have looked at it that way. When you look at the project as a standalone, so I guess I just want to ask you, did you understand the rationale of why a utility project, like utility rates are treated the same as property taxes? So like if I was to say, well, we would score the aquatics facility as a 4 for cost recovery because we would just top it up with property taxes. Well, that's not why we scored a 1. We like the entirety of the waterline project is going to be covered by utility rates. So we don't give it a better score on cost recovery because it's the taxpayers. In the instance of utility rates, we treat those just like their property taxes. The taxpayers are going to be on the hook for the whole thing. There's no outside funding source that we're getting. We treat user fees as an outside funding source, even though they're mostly taxpayers, although some of them aren't, because they're a subset that's agreed to pay more. But in the case of this water line, everyone in the city is going to be on the hook for it. And so it was scored that way because it's like building a project that you have to fund with property taxes. But I really appreciated the response because it enlightened me. And then it got me to thinking the same thing as you could argue that the people that use more water will be potentially contributing more to it, but I don't know that that rationale would really go. So I think what you're saying is the savings we get from leaving the commission, should that count as an outside funding source? And I actually never thought about that one. That's a good question, but in the end, that's monies that we're currently paying out now, right? Like, so I probably made it worse. But
no, you
I'll let
didn't.
Mr. Dance jump in and save me. But
I'm sorry, I missed that last comment.
Do you want to jump in? You don't have to.
No, I think Troy explained it. So in terms of just the concept, the whole concept, like if we've been able to articulate how a utility rate is analogous to a property tax, that was my main goal. But I think your point of a longer term potential payback is something we just don't simply have that level of detail at this point to understand what, over how period of time, what that will change with utility rates of having this secondary line.
And it's my position that we would own an asset that would be funded by a reduced cost of product, and so it's essentially cost the taxpayer very little to nothing to have this independent brand new asset at our disposal. So it's self-funded. In other words, the cost recovery is very high. And I know the taxpayer is paying it, but if we pay the same dollars and no more and get an improved level of service, that's paid for. It's free. Like, how do we account for that in the 1? And I don't see it. And I don't want to beat this up to the end of the earth, but I do believe that the vision you guys used for that particular line is skewed. It's certainly skewed from my perspective.
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Kelly, I can appreciate that. I think at the point of scoring when this was done, we just didn't consider that perspective. So the perspective we took was this was a utility project and the rate would be paying for the utility project. So your perspective is accurate. We simply didn't have that level of information as well.
And that gets me to another point that I wanted to make. Thank you. Obviously, for this to work, there has to be a rather detailed and concise summary of all of these projects so that all of the people involved in the scoring process understand what's going on.
Yeah, correct. You're to Councillor Kelly. Absolutely. So the individual scoring initially is done by the subject matter expert in that area. Then a peer review team does come in to validate, and that peer review team does need that level of information as well. So,
okay, I don't think I need to beat it up anymore. I just would think that if I scored the water line, it would rank a heck of a lot higher, and there's nothing saying I would be wrong, right? We would just have a lively discussion about who's thinking the clearest.
and through your worship to Councillor Kelly, as we talk about the benefit of program and capital project costing, some of the benefit is just this dialogue and this type of discussion, the different perspectives on these projects and the elements that need to go in as you start to consider them.
Okay. Do you have any others?
No, I'm good, Mayor Catcher. It's not going to change anything on the budget. I needed the clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything from day one that they feel wasn't discussed or brought up? Not seeing anything? Looking for the last time going around? Okay, Mr. Dance, before I adjourn, I'm going to you because you always give me the notes. We're finished with capital for now.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we're finished with capital. We just had from today, it just looks like the one motion. We are back on November the 15th for operating. Intent is that the budget document would be out the week prior to that, and I believe we have 4 days scheduled for operating.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 10:31. Thank you.